Welcome, everyone. Glad you're all here. Very excited about this event. This event is co-hosted by Strangers No Longer, and specifically the St. Charles Borromeo and Nativity Circle of Support here in Detroit. And they will share a little bit more about how this event came to be, but we're so happy to have you all and have some special guests, and we will be recording this event. It actually already is recording because we want to make sure that that this can be on our website and be a resource for individuals and circles in the future as we need to continue to write letters of support for our beloved circle members, network members, and just other parish and community members who might be needing our support. This meeting is being it does have interpretation. So if you are I believe most of all of the speakers will be speaking in English, but if you are a Spanish speaker, you can click, or if you just want to hear the Spanish version, you can click on the interpretation button at the bottom and click the Spanish channel or click the English channel, and that will give us the interpretation in the language we prefer. So, si están conectados y quieren usar la interpretación.
You're connected and you wish to use the interpretation. Dionela is here to do the interpretation. So you just have to click on the interpretation icon. And then you choose the channel of your preference.
So with that, I just again welcome everyone, and I will from here hand it over to Nancy Silveri from Nativity Parish to open us in a prayer. Oh, one more before Nancy gets started. I will ask everyone to put themselves on mute so that we don't have any background noise, and then the speaker, you'll just have to unmute yourself as you go to talk. Nancy?
Okay. Well, let's quiet ourselves and bow our heads. Heavenly Father, you created us in your own image and likeness, but sin has twisted the minds of men, and throughout the world there is much injustice and much carelessness of the rights of other people and our own personal responsibility. We are called to play the Good Samaritan. We are called to be in relationship with one another. You have promised to dwell wherever two or more of us are gathered in your name. In our community, we are many different people. We come from many different places and have many different cultures. So Lord, please help us to love with our whole hearts, generously and often, today and every day. Open our hearts that we may be bold in finding the riches of inclusion and the treasures of diversity among us. Help us to welcome the refugee, share our gifts, build bridges of trust, not walls of fear. Seek justice and peace for all people, thereby bringing Christ's light to the world. We pray all this in faith. Amen.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And now I will hand it over to Roger Frink from St. Charles Borromeo Parish, and he can give us a little bit more background of how this event came to be and what to expect for the day.
Okay, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Nancy, for the wonderful prayer to start us off with. It was very nice, appreciate it. So I'm with the St. Charles Nativity Circle, and our circle is supporting an immigrant woman who lives in Detroit with her 2 children. And we were asked to write letters of support for an upcoming hearing. I had some background about letter writing for immigrants in support before, and so we got started, and different members of our circle sent me letters via email, and then I collected the letters, I printed them, and I was getting ready to deliver them to her lawyer. And then I discovered in a conversation with the lawyer that the letters needed to be signed. They also needed the writer's ID, either a copy of their driver's license or what have you. So we had to regroup and, kind of start again, and we had better advice to what to do. So I was able to then get the letters, the hard copies with the signatures, and deliver them to the lawyer. But it was a little bit of a process, and we discovered that we really needed a little more guidance. So Veronica Beltran contacted our circle and offered to do this workshop. So we're very grateful to have her and Maura here today, because now we can get some good advice about how to write effective letters for the future when this occurs and we need to use our skills again. So with that being said, I would like to read some brief bios of our two presenters. And first with us is Veronica Beltran. Veronica Beltran is the legal director of the Southwest Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Center. The Southwest Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Center is a nonprofit that provides pro bono services and representation to immigrants and refugees in the Southeast Michigan area. Ms. Beltran graduated from Detroit Mercy Law in 2020. During her time as a student, she worked for the Immigration Law Clinic at Detroit Mercy Law and was continuously involved in community efforts that supported immigrants. Next, we have Maura Corrigan. Maura Corrigan is a member of the Circle of Support at St. Charles Nativity. She's an attorney at Butzel Law in Detroit. She previously served as Justice and Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, Judge and Chief Judge of the Michigan Court of Appeals, and Director of the Michigan Department of Human Services. She has been a visiting fellow in poverty studies at the American Enterprise Institute and a state and federal prosecutor. She continues to work in child welfare and poverty studies. So now I'd like to turn it over to Veronica and Maura, whoever would like to begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roger, for the introduction and for everyone being here on this Saturday morning. My name is Veronica Beltran. I will be covering the immigration context portion of letters of support, and Maura, who has amazing experience as a judge, will reflect on that, on what judges like to see, candor to the court, and her own experience in writing a letter. I read your letter, Maura, and it was amazing. It was perfect. I was like, this is the poster child letter for all letters. So it was really, really great. Thank you for doing that. So in the context of letters of support, it is always based on what type of relief the immigrant is seeking. There are these two worlds that immigration lawyers work in, which is the immigration court world and the non-immigration court world, which is applications, U-visa applications for victims of crime, waivers for families, right? And asking letters in those spaces. So when we talk about letters of support, it's always going to base off of the relief that the immigrant is seeking. And the content of the letter will be reflective on the relief that they're seeking and the purpose for which that letter is being provided for. So for example, in the case of an immigrant who has been here for at least 10 years, has US citizen family, and is now being deported, if that person is going to ask for a letter, it could be one of many things. It could be to confirm that they've been in the country for at least 10 years. It could be to state that this person is of good moral character, which is another requirement for that type of relief being sought. So if you are being approached by someone that, hey, my husband needs a letter of support, important questions to ask is, what is the context? What is the relief that they're seeking? What is it that they need in that letter to be stated that relates to their case? And the letter, obviously, I'm really happy that Roger brought these points up. The letter, I'm not talking about something that's written on a napkin or a little hand-drawn note, that it will not be accepted by immigration court or other agencies that work within the immigration world. It should be typed out. It needs to be signed in ink, an original signature. It needs to be accompanied with a copy of the writer's identification, preferably a driver's license. It can also be a passport, their green card. And if the letter is being written by someone who is in some form of a professional capacity, it's preferred that it be written on their letterhead. So for example, let's say this dad, who is now being put in removal proceedings, needs to prove that he is of good moral character and is supporting his children. He can ask for a letter for a school counselor for his kid's school, right? And that school counselor should be writing that letter on letterhead. and stating the reasons for which this dad is so involved if he is involved. And the content of the letter, like I said previously, it depends on the relief being sought, but also the relationship that you have with that person. So for example, a family member's letter will look very much differently than a school counselor's letter. The relationship should always be established first, in the sense of, I know Juan Carlos because I am his children's school counselor, and in my capacity as school counselor, I have seen him be involved. I have seen how close his children are to him, and if he is deported, these children will suffer, psychologically or emotionally based off of other needs that they have. If it is based off of your personal relationship with someone, it's not saying your job title. That doesn't, have much to do with the relationship. You can certainly state that later on in the letter. However, it's based on the relationship you have with that person and giving specific examples. Another example of letters that we ask for is not just letters of support, but is letters of witnessing how someone has suffered from the trauma that they have undergone, whether it's in their home country or here in the United States, right? So let's say it's someone that you have supported in your circle of support, and you have actually, heard that person's story directly and have been supporting that immigrant through their trauma. That's another example of stating, I know, Guadalupe through this circle of support, and I have helped her in her journey of healing from trauma that she suffered in Honduras, right? So that's an example of a letter of support, or just a letter that you have witnessed how this person has suffered or continues to suffer because of past trauma. There are so many different types of letters of support, letters supporting someone in their claim, letters of witnessing a crime as well. At SWORC, we deal with a lot of U visa cases, immigrants who have been victims of crime. And in those cases, we also ask for letters for people stating how this person has continuously suffered trauma from being a victim of crime, and on top of it, being an undocumented immigrant in the United States. So that's another example. I always say, rule of thumb, get the lawyer's number. Lawyers, we want to receive good letters of support, complete letters of support in the sense of signature, typed out preferably, attaching that colored copy of an ID, and if needed, having it be put on letterhead as well. So the person asking, if you still have doubts, certainly ask for the lawyer's number. That is something that a lawyer will pick up the phone about because it influences their client's case and the likelihood of success on the case, whether it's immigration court or an application. And the more letters that an attorney receives for their client's case and the more quality they are, the better chance the immigrant has in winning their case or seeking the relief that they're seeking in that moment. And also, on top of that, giving specific examples. I cannot harp on that enough. Just saying, oh, Juan Carlos is an amazing father. That's not enough. Give specific examples of how that person has good moral character, how that person has helped your parish. Giving specific stories is very, very helpful in creating that personal relationship in the story that you're sharing to the judge or to the USCIS officer, again, depending on the relief being sought. And I can't harp on this enough. Just get the lawyer's number if you're still unclear and unsure on what you're being asked about. And the attorney will more than happy review that, a draft letter, or even if it's just a phone conversation. And also, additionally, I've had conversations with individuals who are undocumented themselves and are being asked for a letter of support, and they are fearful that writing a letter will somehow expose their status to USCIS or immigration court. And that does not happen. Writing a letter does not expose you in any way. It does not put you in any harm's way. That is a sealed record. It is sealed in immigration court or with USCIS, which is the administrative agency of immigration. That is not shared. And no, it doesn't matter your status. You can still write a letter supporting that person in their relief being sought in their applications, or in their court hearing in immigration court. So that's the gist of letters in the context of immigration, I will pass it on to Maura to share her experience as being a judge, how letters are helpful for someone. Also sharing a little bit about candor to the court, because I always have to explain to people, if you're going to give in-person testimony and in-person support, you know, can't wear sweatpants to court, got to present yourself in a certain way.
All right. Thank you, Veronica. And I'm glad to join all of you this morning for this workshop on letter writing in immigration cases. Thanks, Roger, for the introduction, and Veronica for your good work. And thanks to SNL and especially Amy for organizing us today. I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes, and then in the remaining time, we'll open it up for your questions and comments. What makes a good letter of support? I am not an expert on immigration law, but I was an appellate judge for 19 years in Michigan. And in that capacity, I reviewed numerous letters in criminal cases that were written to sentencing judges. And also, as an attorney, I've written many letters on behalf of criminal defendants being sentenced. So I have some views on the subject. Suppose you're asked to write a letter of support for a person who's caught up in the immigration system. Where do you start? Well, the first characteristic of a good letter of support is that it is on point. And as Veronica was outlining to you, it's very important for you as the letter writer who've agreed to write a letter to understand what it is that the judge is going to be deciding in the case. So before you even write one word, you should understand what it is that the person needs, and if possible, talk to their lawyer to find out what it is going to be happening during that proceeding. Now, you're not asking the lawyer to write the letter for you. You're helping to get focused on what is on point in the very proceeding that's at stake. And Veronica did a nice job explaining about all of that. If you can't speak to the lawyer, then try to find knowledgeable people, and contacting Amy or members of SNL, I think is a good way to go when you're trying to write a letter of support. Suppose now you feel like you have a good understanding of what the judge is going to decide. It's time to put pen to paper or compose it at your computer if that's how you do it. And the first thing you want to do is establish your credibility. Everything that a judge is doing is trying to decide who the judge believes. Are you a credible person? Are you reliable? And that's the first thing you need to do in the letter. So who are you, and what is your relationship to the individual who invited you to write the letter? How long have you known them? So the first thing you want to do, and I'll give an example of this. Suppose Mary Smith asked me to write a letter for her. I'd say, "Dear Judge so-and-so, I am a retired lawyer and I'm a retired judge and an attorney, and I have known Mary Smith for 4 years. She is my next door neighbor." Or if it's your friend or your relative, or you go to church with this person at your parish, how do you know them? Saying what your relationship is and a little bit about who you are helps to establish your credibility with the judge. Now, when I think about good legal writing, and I've certainly read, I don't know, millions of pages over the years, good legal writing does two things. First of all, it informs, and second of all, it persuades. So you're telling the judge what you know, and you're also hoping to convince them of your position. I like to go back to the dictionary and what persuade means, and it means to provide a sound reason for doing something. I can't tell you what those good reasons are. You know the reasons that you support this individual. You have to put that down on paper or on your computer and provide a sound reason for the judge to rule in favor of the person you're writing for. The second characteristic of a good letter is that it is short and simple. Judges have lots to read. I used to read 3,000 pages of briefs a month when I was on the Supreme Court. Be merciful to the judge. They don't need 25 pages from you. So when you get done with your draft and you've put out why you're a credible person and why and what the reasons are, go back and cut it down. Don't write too much. Make it short and simple. So, and the judges will appreciate that they can understand what you've written. Once you have this draft letter, get somebody that you trust to read it over for substance and for style. And that means check your grammar, check your spelling, and check the substance. And if they have some ideas for you to make revisions and they make sense to you, go ahead and do it. And then you've finalized your draft. I'm not going to repeat what Veronica said to you about your letter. I do think it's important you remember it's a business letter and that you include your address and you include the judge's address and the case name and the case number right there up in the caption. And I would recommend in the last paragraph of your letter that you give them your email and you give them your telephone number so that if they have any questions, that they can contact you and follow up with you. Give the court a chance to do this just in case. And I'm going to cut the rest of what I had since it duplicates things that Veronica said. That's everything that I've tried to talk to you about is what I think is candor to the court. And that's the most crucial thing that you can do on behalf of the people that you're writing for. So I wish you the best in all this. And if there's a way that I can help you in the future, even though I'm not an expert in this area, happy to do so. So thank you for listening. And at this point, we're ready to take any questions or comments that anybody in the group has. So thanks.
I have one. Veronica said when you attach your ID to make sure that it's a colored ID. I didn't do that. It was black and white. Is that like significant?
That's okay. When I submit exhibits to the court, I prefer to submit them colored so that it doesn't leave room for any blurriness or anything. If it's clear, that's fine. There's no requirement on that. That's just me being a nitpicky attorney and trying to be a perfectionist, and what I present to the court looks nice and put together.
All right. So the important thing is clear.
Correct.
Clear.
Thanks, Judy. It looks like Andrea has a question.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask for clarification on the letterhead portion that was discussed. So if I'm a student and researcher at the University of Chicago, but that doesn't exactly have any relationship to the person I'm writing a letter to. So it's my sister's husband. Do I still use that letterhead, or is the letterhead only if it has that relationship to the individual?
I would not use letterhead from the University of Chicago in the instance you're describing, because you're not writing as an employee of the university, and you're not in any way don't want to be construed to misrepresent a connection to the university when you're not writing in that capacity. So I wouldn't use letterhead if I were you. I'd use your personal stationery, or plain paper is fine.
Thank you.
So you've got Janice and then Nancy have questions.
Okay, one of my questions was about letterhead too, and I think it's just been answered, but to double check, I don't even know if they would allow it, but does that also mean that we should not ask to put our letter on St. Charles letterhead since we're a parishioner? And that's how we know her. I mean, that's how I know her, because I was a parishioner and I got involved in the group.
I would not ask to use St. Charles stationery for the same reason. You're writing in your personal capacity. And you can
Okay.
tell the judge that you know, if it's Lou's, that you know her from going to church with her. I think that you can say that, but I wouldn't, again, when you're using stationery, somebody else's stationery, you're effectively their agent, and you're really not an agent of the church if you ask to use it, but use your own personal stationery. But like I have letterhead because I'm an attorney, and it's got my name on it. So I use that, and it says to the court, she's a lawyer. So I think, using it is fine.
Okay, and also, since I don't think anybody here actually witnessed or was around all of the terrible things that happened to Luz and her family to make her want to leave her home country. So to me, that's sort of like, is that hearsay? Can we reference that? In other words, if I see behavior in her that seems to be, might be that's why she's like that, because she was so traumatized, but I never saw that things happen to her. Is that okay? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I find her incredibly timid and shy and just, I guess, just timid. And I'm very shy. So if I think somebody's pretty shy, that's a lot. And I'm assuming that a big part of that is because she was just so brutalized and everything, but I never saw that. So should I not be drawing that reference in the letter?
So in the context of immigration court, at the end of the day, the immigration judge gets, even though we submit letters and statements and research and briefs, at the end of the day, the judge would make the decision whether they will accept it or not. In the context of, if you're referencing to what someone has shared with you in relation to your relationship with them in the context of the letter, that's fine. We're not asking for someone to transcribe everything that someone has shared with someone, but it can be used as a reference as to the letter. So for example, if it's in the situation of this individual, it's, they came to our church because they immigrated to the country and we're helping her because she's seeking asylum, and this, she shared with me what she's gone through. So it's in reference to your relationship to give the context to the letter, but you're not transcribing everything that she has gone through, or really anyone has gone through in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
And wouldn't it be fair to say, Veronica, that there's not the same sort of restriction on hearsay in this proceeding as there, and that's true in our state courts in Michigan as well. When you're talking about letters of support and sentencing, for example, you can reference hearsay. That's not a problem. It's not the same restrictions as if you're a witness testifying in court. So
that's correct. And actually, immigration court is different in the sense of how a judge establishes credibility of a claim. And in that context, there have been cases that I have brought before immigration court where there is no witness statements. It's the testimony of the immigrant themselves, and one's testimony can be used as evidence in itself in immigration court. So if a judge finds that the immigrant themselves is credible enough and that their testimony is credible, then that's enough to establish that what they say happened to them happened, right? So, and technically, if I were to talk to a criminal law professor, they'd be like, well, that's hearsay because that person is just saying what they said happened to them. So immigration court is different. Rules apply differently there. But certainly if you're giving reference to something that someone has shared with you as to the context of your relationship, that's totally fine.
And I will say, for the letter that I wrote on behalf of Luz, for example, I referenced that she had spoken at, during the sermon time at Nativity. And I referenced Brother Ray being, believing Luz, or he wouldn't have put her on the altar in front of all of us. And then talked about her story, what happened to her in Guatemala. So trying to show the internal credibility of what she had to say, and the fact that our pastor believed her enough to put her on the altar. Just think about how do you establish that something's truthful?
So Nancy had a question, and then we're about at time, but Bill, if you want to ask your question, and then we'll wrap up. So Nancy, don't forget to take yourself off mute.
I just wanted to confirm with Veronica. I'm very sincere. If my letter needs any tweaking, I am more than happy to do that. So thank you. That's all.
A quick question on Luz. I don't know who I'm asking, the judge or the lawyer. Well, you're both lawyers, but in Luz's case, are we asking the judge simply to grant asylum? Is that it, or is there a little bit of a twist on what we're asking the judge?
So my rule of thumb, and Maura, you can chime in. When I ask someone to write a letter, I make sure to tell them, don't tell the judge what they need to do. The whole point of a letter in the immigration world, at least, is tying that to one of the points needed to get the relief someone is seeking. So for example, in the case of someone that's seeking asylum, you're not telling the judge, oh, you should grant them asylum because these things happened to them, right? That's for the attorney to create the argument that there was enough persecution. The point of the letter is to add on to that argument and the evidence that's provided that she has suffered persecution. She should be granted asylum, right? So it's not, you're not asking the judge to do anything. Your letter is in a way of support for the relief that they are seeking. So, for example, if it's someone, I don't know if this is your situation, Andrea, with a family member, but if it's, to establish a waiver for someone, you're not saying, officer, grant them the waiver because I said so or because I think so. No, it's because they know the person. Sometimes we ask letters for people that are getting married and are petitioning for one another, right? So you're not asking the officer, give my, now brother-in-law a green card. It's, I know this person in this capacity, and the letter, again, needs to be tied to the relief being sought and the person's story. So I hope I answered your question, but anytime I see a letter that's very direct of like, you, Judge Simons, you need to grant this person asylum. I'm like, oh, that's my job. Keep the letter in a personal context.
Thanks.
Well, this has been fantastic. Any final burning questions? I also know that Maura and Veronica shouldn't speak for them, but I'm guessing they would be willing to field some questions afterwards as well. There we go. Veronica just shared her email with us in the chat. So thank you all for coming. Thank you especially to Veronica and Maura for being here. It is wonderful to have such experts like you both to share your wisdom with us. And I know that this, for the circles here and for the individuals, we've come because we have specific experiences and examples in mind. And I know that in the future, this will also be very helpful for any strangers no longer or community members who are looking on our website at this recording. So I will just say that we have been sharing a little bit about one of our members, Luz Ramos, and there's another Strangers No Longer immigrant leader. Her name is Darius Bartolon. Each of them are in need of letters to support their case. So if you have if you know them personally, or if you have heard them speak at your parish and you would like to or at a Strangers No Longer event, and you would like to write a letter of support for them, we please encourage you to do so. I ask you to do so, and I will be in touch with you all after with a little bit of information about how to do that. So via email, or you can reach out to us. My email is amykettner.snl@gmail.com, and my phone number I will put in the chat here for you all as well. And with that, thank you everyone for for joining us on this Saturday morning, and we hope this has been helpful. And if Nancy, Veronica, Maura, and Roger can stick around afterwards just for a minute to debrief, that'd be great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.